We've just had Prime Minister's questions, and in the time that I've been editing the recording and putting in the names, the news has come out that Starmer has indeed done a U-turn on the winter fuel payments, which is, of course, a good thing. The PMQs today was less a battle of ideas, more a wrangle over the potential reversal, the accusations, the optics, though at times it flickered gently into real substance. Keir Starmer, usually risk-averse, pulled a political rabbit from the hat by announcing the partial U-turn on his government's widely criticised cuts to winter fuel payments, and the move, sudden but not unsurprising, dominated the session. Kemi Badenoch, in her now familiar performance as inadequate leader of the opposition, came armed but perhaps misfiring, and Lee Anderson managed to squeeze in the afternoon's most memorable line without quite intending to. Let's begin with Starmer. Just moments into the session, he said, "We want to ensure more pensioners are eligible for winter fuel payments." It was not a minor clarification, it was an open concession that Labour's decision to means test the benefit has been politically costly and morally bruising, and there were audible gasps across the chamber. He couched the shift in economic improvement and fiscal responsibility, but the timing suggests it owes more to the bruising local elections and to his response and the looming reform threat than to any surge in Treasury goodwill or the Treasury coffers. He gave himself space to manoeuvre by deferring details to a fiscal event. In other words, ask me in the autumn. Nevertheless, it was an adept move to neutralise the backbench unrest and wrong foot the opposition. It worked up to a point. Kemi Badenoch's opening line accused Starmer of driving inflation with Labour's budget. Her tone was sharp, her delivery confident, but she seemed momentarily caught off guard by the winter fuel reversal, asking somewhat confusingly whether the PM intended to change course just after he announced that he precisely had changed course. She doesn't listen, she follows her script, she slavishly reads what she can, and even then she gets into a mess. It is extraordinary. The Prime Minister and the Leader of the Opposition practice, apparently, for this session before going on. There is no evidence that Kemi Badenoch has put in any work at all. No evidence, week after miserable week. Is this what she gets paid for? For this nonsense, this reading of a piece of paper that she doesn't quite understand, and she doesn't listen to what the Prime Minister says before she comes back with a line which has been printed out for her. Her subsequent, all the questions that followed, pressed the tax rise memo leaked from Angela Rayner's office. They had punch, but they lacked rhythm. Her best line came when she called Starmer's reasoning a joke, referencing the day's inflation figures, but it was undermined by her own spokesperson later refusing to confirm whether the Conservatives would restore the very payment she was using as a rhetorical cudgel. Her hands up who wanted this moment felt more student union than stateswoman, entertaining, certainly effective, arguably not. Still, slightly better than usual for energy and media cut-through, but still not of the standard that I would expect of a leader of the opposition, who is the person who is on the front foot, the person asking the questions. Starmer, never really very interesting, still manages to score more points, still manages to think on his feet. Starmer parries Badenoch's attacks with something that approaches relish on his terms. When pushed on taxes, he brushes it off with a jibe about Tory economic illiteracy. When accused of U-turning, he invokes growth and recovery, the usual obfuscation, but slick. He also slipped in a neat aside about the more passport e-gates at EU airports, cheekily adding that Nigel Farage was the first through them. In response to Lee Anderson. Listen for that one, that's a really good one. That's the point at which this PMQs bristled with life. The Reform leader's apparent use of the very benefits he's campaigned to dismantle offers a delicious morsel of irony, particularly when he should be in the chamber. That's his job, not to be holidaying in the south of France. And Starmer exploits it with the wry satisfaction of a man finally permitted a joke, but the prize for theatricality went predictably to Lee Anderson, who accused the PM of hiding deportation data and asked for a breakdown of how many deported migrants came on small boats or the backs of lorries. And Starmer's reply that reform didn't want to fix the problem because it benefits from them not fixing it was sharper than usual. It hinted at the long game Labour may be preparing, portraying reform not just as nasty but as self-interested saboteurs of national problem solving. But Lee Anderson is quite right. He's quite right. He does what Lee Anderson does. He roars, he postures, he left the chamber slightly warmer and not a jot wiser. But he is right. There is no evidence that Starmer has actually deported people who arrived on small boats, who arrived under the back of lorries, who perhaps don't deserve asylum, who perhaps don't qualify for asylum. But whether their applications have actually been processed or not, that's the question. Instead, the Home Office is doing what the Home Office has done since the days of Theresa May. It's demonstrably tardy, lazy even, and it scores points by deporting those people who are very well documented, people whose visas have accidentally expired, and students who are so overwhelmed with paperwork, it's pretty easy to find a mistake here and there and to throw them out on the knowledge that they're going to come back in a couple of weeks' time because they are committed to that course. I thought it was interesting. It's always interesting to see Lee Anderson. And although I find Lee Anderson irritating on the one hand, I find his views irritating, I always quite enjoy his genial smiles, particularly when he's the subject of the jokes. He and Richard Tice and Farage lend a certain life to the House of Commons when that life has been drained from it by the likes of Kemi Badenoch. So what do we learn? Starmer blinked first on the winter fuel and made a calculated retreat that then left Kemi Badenoch looking completely inadequate. It might also restore trust among the grey vote. Badenoch's attacks were fairly well prepared, but destabilised by the PM's response. Her performance as a result, it should have been more combative. It wasn't catastrophic, though her timing misfires as ever. It will haunt the highlight reel, of course. And Starmer remains vulnerable on tax, on inflation, on welfare strategy. I thought she would talk about the EU-UK summit, but she didn't. Today, Starmer was able to show a nimbleness not always associated with his leadership, and Farage once again loomed large, even in absentia, this time through a nice e-gate in Nice. PMQs was noisy, unserious, often comic. But in today's case, it at least gave us clarity on where the pressure lies. For now, Labour is governing with the handbrake half on, and the Conservatives are heckling from a back seat that they may never regain power again. And as long as Kemi Badenoch remains in place, that is that is a certainty. Under Kemi Badenoch, the Conservatives will get worse and worse, and the possibility of a Conservative government is more and more elusive as the weeks drag on, and this awful leader of the opposition remains in place. And the sensible thing for her to do is to resign. I know she has license to remain in place for a year after her election. That is a year too long. And it's not about whether one is a supporter of the Conservative Party or the Labour Party or the Lib Dems or the Greens. The leader of the opposition is one of those roles that needs to be done well if our constitutional system is to work. And when week after week drags on and we can see that the leader of the opposition is useless, it's her duty to drop out.
Mr. Speaker, my deepest condolences, and I'm sure those of the whole House, are with the families and friends of Jenny, Martin and David, tragically killed in the fire in Bicester last week. May I also welcome to the gallery Cheryl Corbell, the mother of Olivia. I'm always humbled by those with the courage to respond to appalling heartbreak by campaigning for change. And I know the whole House will pay tribute to her extraordinary courage and extraordinary resolve. Mr. Speaker, because of the action taken by this government, the UK is now the fastest growing economy in the G7. Interest rates have been cut 4 times, and we've secured our 3rd trade deal in 3 weeks. India, the US and the EU. Deals in the national interest that improve the lives of working people and businesses across the United Kingdom. Mr. Speaker, this morning I had meetings with ministerial colleagues and others. In addition to my duties in this House, I shall have further such meetings later today.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This Labour government has been in power now for almost 12 months. So when will the Prime Minister stop defying the will of the British people, stop dancing around the subject and stop all illegal immigration into the United Kingdom, which has been rising under his watch?
It was the last government that lost control of immigration. Record numbers on net migration, lost control of the borders. We're bringing forward legislation to give law enforcement the greatest possible powers. What are they doing? They're voting against it.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Whilst the economy is showing signs of improving, many pensioners are still impacted by the cost of living crisis. People in Luton who have worked hard all their lives, seeing their precious savings slip away. So can the Prime Minister tell us what measures he will take to help struggling pensioners in towns like mine?
Prime Minister. Well, Mr. Speaker, we all know the economy was left in an absolute mess by the Tories. We had to stabilise the economy with tough decisions, but the right decisions. Because of those decisions, the economy is beginning to improve. Those growth figures last year, the highest growth in the G7, interest rate cuts, 4 in a row, 3 trade deals. But I recognise that people are still feeling the pressure of the cost of living crisis, including pensioners. And as the economy improves, we want to make sure people feel those improvements in their days as their lives go forward. And that is why we want to ensure that as we go forward, more pensioners are eligible for winter fuel payments. As you would expect, Mr. Speaker, we will only make decisions we can afford. That is why we will look at that as part of a fiscal event.
Many of the opposition can be better or not.
Mr. Speaker, it's extraordinary listening to that last answer from the Prime Minister. Inflation was 2% when Conservatives left office. 2%. It's now nearly double that. When will he recognise that it's Labour's budget driving up inflation?
I think what she forgot to say was over 11% on their watch, and she didn't say a word. I am confident those numbers will come down, Mr. Speaker. The Bank of England is confident those numbers will come down. That's why we've seen 4 interest rates in a row. But I notice she can't resist grabbing any opportunity to talk the country down. She doesn't mention the growth figures, the interest rate figures, record investment, wages up more than prices, 200,000 jobs created, 4 trade deals. And the reason, Mr. Speaker, they haven't learned, they haven't changed, and as George Osborne said, she doesn't have a credible economic plan.
Mr. Speaker, this is laughable from the Prime Minister. He knows that inflation was brought down by us to 2%, bang on target. We were reacting to a war in Ukraine that brought inflation up all over Europe. While he is doing trade deals with countries like the US and India, their inflation is going down. It's going up here. Why? The ONS says the inflation figures are driven by significant increases in household bills. We warned him repeatedly that this is exactly what would happen, what his policies would do. We called it Awful April. The Prime Minister came into office saying that he would tackle the cost of living crisis. He has failed. He hasn't got a clue, has he?
Mr. Speaker, she talks of their record, the disastrous Liz Truss mini-budget. Inflation through the roof. They left a £22 billion black hole. Living standards at an all-time low. Energy prices through the roof. Mortgages through the roof. And, Mr. Speaker, we're taking measures to bring prices down. That EU deal will bring prices down. That's why supermarkets welcomed it. What did she do? She opposes measures to bring prices down.
Mr. Speaker, he needs to stop whining about what the last government did and look at what he is doing. He is the Prime Minister. Look at the numbers this morning. As if inflation figures weren't bad enough, we've also learned that the Deputy Prime Minister is on manoeuvres. He's lost control of the economy. He's lost control of his cabinet. She's sitting there staring at me. She knew exactly what she was doing when she briefed that into the papers. She is demanding, Mr. Speaker, 8 new tax rises, as if we haven't suffered enough. People out there are struggling. Businesses are struggling. People are losing their jobs. We cannot have more tax rises. Will the Prime Minister rule out new tax rises this year?
Mr. Speaker, she's not learned or changed. They lost the election because their appalling record on the NHS, on health, on prisons, you name it. And now she accuses everyone of whining about the impact that had on the country. It had a huge impact on working people across the country, and they're absolutely right to complain about it. She wants to talk about the Deputy Prime Minister. The Deputy Prime Minister, working with the Chancellor, building 1.5 million new homes, reforming our planning system, putting £7 billion into our economy and bringing forward our employment rights bill, which is the single biggest upgrade to workers' rights in a generation.
That's desperate stuff. The whole House would have heard the Prime Minister refuse to rule out new tax rises. The whole House heard it. He didn't rule it out. That his cabinet is open warfare. The Deputy Prime Minister clearly calling the shots. What is it that we've learned? We're heading for new tax rises. We know inflation is up. It's just more and more bad news from a Prime Minister who has lost control. So we heard his earlier answer, Mr. Speaker. We heard his earlier answer on winter fuel. Let's try and get some more information. I'm going to ask him a simple question. It only requires one word, yes or no. Is he planning to U-turn on winter fuel cuts?
Yes. Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I made clear in my earlier answer that as the economy improves, we want to take measures that will impact on people's lives, and therefore we will look at the threshold, but that will have to be part of a fiscal event. But, Mr. Speaker, they lost control of every element of the economy, of prisons, the borders, the NHS, you name it. And now she's lost control of her party. They are sliding into oblivion. They will have to trade on their past, Mr. Speaker, because that's all they've got.
Speaker, I made it really easy for the Prime Minister. Just a simple question, yes or no, and he could not answer. I wonder how the public feel about a man who can't give a straight answer to a simple question. And you look at all of them behind him, all of them cheering, when this inevitable U-turn on winter fuel comes, and it will, from a desperate Prime Minister, what will he say to the 348 MPs who went over the top and voted for the winter fuel cut last September? Just like the British public, how can any of them ever trust him again?
Mr. Speaker, it's only because of the measures we've taken that the economy is improving. Growth at the highest rate since in the G7. 4 interest rate cuts, 3 trade deals because countries want to trade with this country because of the decisions that we've made. All of those decisions opposed by the party opposite. They've learned absolutely nothing and they're going absolutely nowhere.
Mr. Speaker, this is a Prime Minister who says he's taking measures. The jobs tax is killing jobs. Inflation is up. Business confidence is down. Everyone is worried. He promised to cut bills, but today we see they are rising because of his policies. He promised not to raise taxes on working people, but his jobs tax means people are losing their jobs. Every week we come here with a new company that is saying they are shedding jobs. That's on his watch. He promised to protect pensioners, but his winter fuel cut has driven thousands into hardship. His MPs hate this. He can't see them, but they all look sick just hearing what it is he's going to do. So let's wait until... Oh, yes, they're laughing. They're laughing. They're laughing.
I expect better from whips. And boys on at the back, I've got my eye on you. Kenny Bennett.
Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker.
Order. Sorry. Which one wants to leave first? If I hear it, there we are. They've got the first volunteer. Are you going to behave? Kenny Bennett.
Mr. Speaker, they are laughing just as they laughed at the budget. Hands up who here wanted winter fuel cuts. Hands up. Not a single one of them. Not a single one of them. The fact of the matter is, this Prime Minister is destroying them. They need to look at what they are doing to the country. The truth is, we all know that it is this Prime Minister, this Labour government, and their policies that are shafting the country, isn't it?
Yeah. Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, they look in pretty good form to me, and there's lots of them. Mr. Speaker, she talks about business confidence. Yesterday, I didn't have time to read out the list of all the businesses that have come out in support of our EU deal. Mr. Speaker, I don't have time today. It's a long list. I went immediately to Lidl and spoke to the staff in Lidl. They're delighted with the deal we put forward yesterday. Business like the work we're doing. It's giving them confidence in the EU deal. She's opposed to each and every measure.
Louise Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I recently visited Barrow Hill Primary School in my constituency of North East Derbyshire, a school in receipt of a new free breakfast club. The team there are doing a fantastic job, but challenges still remain. What more can we do as a government to support both them and local parents to give the children of Barrow Hill the start in life that they deserve?
Well, I thank my honourable friend, and we are united by a shared focus on creating better life chances for our children. And I'm delighted to hear her constituents are already benefiting. Thanks to our plan for change, we'll deliver free breakfast clubs in every primary school in England. And I'm determined to support parents to give every child the best start in life. And that's why we're rolling out free childcare, expanding the first 300 school-based nurseries and delivering more family hubs.
Shred David, the leader of the Liberal Democrats.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can I associate myself with the Prime Minister's remarks about the terrible fire in Bicester last Thursday? I know from my honourable friend, the member for Bicester and Woodstock, how deeply the close-knit community there has been affected by this tragedy. And firefighters Martin Sadler and Jenny Logan were true heroes, as was Dave Chester. And I hope the full prayers and thoughts of the House are with their loved ones and with the two firefighters still in hospital. Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister has rightly said that his new trade deals will give a much-needed boost to economic growth and thus to the public finances. So will the Prime Minister make sure that struggling families and pensioners see the benefits of the growth? He teased the House with his first answer to his honourable friend, the member for Luton North. So will he commit now to reversing his cuts to the winter fuel payment in full?
Mr. Speaker, firstly, can I just thank him for his comments about the Bicester tragedy. It's very important that in a moment like this, the House does come together. And we are taking measures, obviously, to help with the cost of living crisis. And that's why the EU deal yesterday was so important, because the impact it will have on prices, particularly in supermarkets, directly affecting those who are affected by the cost of living crisis. Mr. Speaker, what I said before was this, that the economy is beginning to improve. People are still feeling the pressure. That's why we're taking the measures that we are. That's why we're striking the trade deals that we are striking. As that improves, I do want people to feel the benefit of the measures that we are taking. And that is why I want to ensure that more pensioners are eligible for winter fuel. It is important that, as you'd expect, that we are clear we can afford the decisions we're making, and that's why it will now be looked at a fiscal event.
Shred David.
Mr. Speaker, I think I welcome what the Prime Minister has said, but we will look at the details, and I hope he will use some of these new proceeds to help others like carers, because the government's changes to PIP will have big consequences for family carers, like Ginny, who cares for her husband Tim, who has myotonic dystrophy. Ginny holds her husband's hand to keep him steady as he walks. He falls frequently and chokes on his food. Ginny is the sole earner in the family. She works part-time on top of caring for Tim. But she's calculated that under the government's cuts, her family will lose £12,000 a year. So can the Prime Minister tell Ginny and many family carers like her, what does he expect them to do?
Mr. Speaker, we have approached this on the basis of the principles that we must support those who need support. On the question of getting people into work, that we should support people into work where they can work, and of course, where they can work, they should. But it is undeniably the case that the current arrangements don't work and need to be reformed. And that's why we're bringing forward reform, necessary reform, to ensure the system works better.
And Elise Mitchell.
Mr. Speaker, yesterday in this place, I read the victim impact statement Cheryl Corbell never got to say to her daughter's killer, Thomas Cashman, because he refused to face her in court. I made up Olivia's Law past second reading, but until it gets royal assent, criminals can still not show up and deny victims justice. So will the Prime Minister commit to making sure Olivia's Law becomes law as fast as possible?
Yeah. Prime Minister.
Can I thank her for reading that victim impact statement? Because I know from talking to Cheryl just how hard it was for her to make that victim impact statement in the first place. It took a huge amount of courage and grief. And she wanted to read that statement to the perpetrator, as she should have been able to do. And I know how visceral the pain is to her of not being able to have done so from the meetings I've had with her. So I do thank my honourable friend for allowing that victim impact statement to be heard by the whole world, by being read out in this chamber. Cowards who commit these heinous crimes should face the consequences of their action and face those that have had huge impact on their lives, and that's why we will force offenders to attend the sentencing hearings with longer sentences, unlimited fines and prison sanctions for those who seek to avoid facing justice. And I again pay tribute to Cheryl, who I will meet later on this afternoon, for having the incredible courage to push for that change, notwithstanding the incredibly painful impact it's had on her and her family.
Jim Allister.
The government assures us that Northern Ireland is still in the United Kingdom's customs union. If so, how is it then that British steel can be sold to the United States tariff-free, but if the same British steel is sold into Northern Ireland, it's subject to EU tariffs? Why on Monday did the Prime Minister not even try to take back control over the trade laws that govern Northern Ireland?
Well, Mr. Speaker, it is important that we reduce tariffs on steel into the US market or other markets, including the EU markets, for obvious reasons. It is also vital that we seek to ensure that we reduce any barriers in trade within the United Kingdom as a whole. Yesterday was a step towards that. There's further work to do, but we do want to get to that place where we can trade without those barriers in the United Kingdom. We'll continue to work on that.
Andrew Pex.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Prime Minister will know that thriving high streets are essential to local growth. But in cities like mine, people are increasingly concerned by the uncontrolled growth of betting shops and vape stores. Research shows this concern is not isolated. Nearly half of betting shops and gambling stores are in the 20% of places which are struggling the most, like Peterborough. So can I ask the Prime Minister, will he ask his departments to meet with me and campaigners so we can discuss ways that local communities like mine can take back control of our high streets?
My honourable friend is an excellent champion for his constituents, and we are committed to supporting our nation's high streets to adapt and thrive. Planning applications are required for any new betting office to make sure locals have a say on individual cases, and communities can use the planning system to allow for a change of use of their properties. And I will make sure that he gets the meeting that is asked for.
Michael.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On Friday, the EFRA Select Committee published its report on the Government's vision for agriculture. The committee agrees with the Government that land purchase being used to shelter wealth from inheritance tax is a problem that needs to be tackled. As a cross-party committee with a government majority, however, we took the unanimous view that the Government's current proposals for inheritance tax reform will catch too many family farms who will simply not be able to pay the bill. We are asking for the changes to be paused and reworked. Will the Prime Minister listen to the Select Committee and those on his own benches who want to tackle tax evasion and support the farmers who keep producing food for the nation's table?
Well, Mr. Speaker, he knows the very limited impact of the inheritance tax, only on farmers at very, very high level. But he will also know the record amount of money we put in at the budget into farming, and of course the measures taken yesterday with the EU deal, which will massively help farmers selling their products into the EU market.
Julian Buckley.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Wrexham, Shropshire and Midlands Railway is on track to link North Wales and my Shrewsbury constituency directly to London with 5 trains daily, strengthening cross-border travel and fuelling this government's mission to drive economic growth. With 15 members from constituencies along the route already on board, will the Prime Minister support our journey and urge the Office for Rail and Road to give WSMR's open access application the green signal?
Mr. Speaker, our plan for change will see the railways reformed to deliver more reliable and better value services for passengers right across the country. My honourable friend has been a champion for better railways and easier journeys for her constituents. Open access operators have huge potential to offer passengers more choice. I'd be delighted to make sure that she and other interested MPs meet with the Rail Minister to put their case forward.
Dr. Neil Hudson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I think I'm right in saying that the Prime Minister might be a lawyer, trained to review evidence and reach judgment. So when he looks at the effects of his decisions, cutting the winter fuel payment, making pensioners poorer, damaging businesses with the jobs tax, decimating rural communities with the family farm tax, and risking our food security by selling off our fishing waters, surely he can review the evidence and see the verdict. Will the Prime Minister now throw these damaging policies out of his court once and for all before they do any more harm?
Well, the evidence is certainly coming in. Growth is the highest in the G7. 4 interest rates in a row, and trade deals with countries across the world who want to do deals with this country because they can see the stability that this government has brought about. Instability with them, stability and growth with this Labour government.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This is National Epilepsy Week, and we're joined in the gallery by England rugby player Tommy Freeman, who was diagnosed with epilepsy at 19. But through effective treatment has gone on to be selected for the British and Irish Lions, and I hope the Prime Minister will join me in congratulating him on that great achievement. But for a third of epilepsy sufferers, seizures cannot be controlled by medication, like my constituent Ben Lacey, who suffers multiple seizures every single day. Ben will never be able to work, yet has been subject to the stress and uncertainty of multiple PIP reassessments. So will the Prime Minister reaffirm his commitment to ensuring that people like Ben with lifelong conditions who cannot work will be protected from these damaging reassessments and given the support they need to live with dignity?
Well, can I begin by congratulating Tommy and everyone selected to represent the British and Irish Lions. It's an incredible achievement, and we'll be cheering them on. Mr. Speaker, it's important that we do protect those with severe disabilities or lifelong health conditions who can't work, paying them a premium and stopping those reassessments, which is part of the reform that we're bringing about. Ultimately, we also do need to get back to face-to-face assessments by trained assessors and health professionals, which fell to only 1 in 10 assessments under the last government.
The Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This Prime Minister, Mr. Speaker, keeps telling his gullible backbenchers, those over there, that he's deported 24,000 people from this country since he came into power. But he won't say who these people are. Now, it's my guess that they are people that came on work visas, students, and they are simply overstayers. But I'm willing, Mr. Speaker, to be proved wrong if you can answer one simple question. How many of these people that he's deported are failed asylum seekers that's come on small boats or on the back of lorries? Answer the question.
Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I'm very proud that we've removed over 24,000 people. That's the highest record for nearly 10 years. We're taking other measures to get back control of our borders, including the Borders Bill, which gives our law enforcement enhanced powers, including terrorism-like powers. What did his party do? What did he do? He voted against them. And I'll tell you why he voted against them. Because they don't want to fix this problem, because it benefits them. It benefits them not to fix it. Party before country. It's very good he's standing in for the member for Clacton, I have to say. There was no sign of him yesterday at the EU. So he was the first through the E-gates somewhere to south of France. Nice work if you can get it.
Christine Sullivan.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I welcome the government's investment of £680 million into mental health support. Meanwhile, in Scotland, many children in my constituency of Bathgate and Linlithgow are stuck on an NHS Lothian neurodevelopmental waiting list, which was only recently seen patients referred in March 2022. This delay can lead to poor mental health, with children ending up on a CAMHS waiting list too. How will the Prime Minister work with devolved governments to ensure faster diagnosis and greater support so that no child across these aisles grows up on a waiting list?
Well, I thank her for her question. She rightly raises the broken promises of the SNP on mental health services powerfully. It is important, and we will have positive discussion with devolved governments to work on addressing mental health waiting times. But look, the SNP promised to invest in frontline mental health services, then cut them by £54 million in real terms this year. Now, with a record settlement in the budget, 2 decades in power, the SNP are out of excuses and out of ideas, and Scotland deserves better than that.
If the Prime Minister agrees that the Israeli government starving children to death is monstrous, why does he think it's okay for the UK to continue to sell Israel the equipment for the fighter jets to drop bombs on these starving children?
What we contribute into a pot is parts for fighter jets. And if we were to stop that, they couldn't be used by other countries in the other conflicts, including those in which we are involved. It doesn't know the detail at all. They're not sold directly. They go into a pot. If we were to stop that, they wouldn't then be available to others around the world who desperately need them in the conflicts they're engaged in. And that's why we won't do it.
Cat Ettles.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Dementia Gateway, my constituency of Stourbridge, was recently at risk of closure following £42 million worth of budget cuts by the Conservative-run Dudley Council. The Gateway is a vital service for dementia patients and their carers, providing daytime activities, advice and support from trained advisors, and following a well-fought campaign with cross-party support, the Dementia Gateway has been saved. So this Dementia Action Week, would the Prime Minister join me in congratulating Lisa and the campaigners? And does he agree with me that services like the Dementia Gateway in Stourbridge are essential and support the government's mission to provide quality care in our communities close to home?
Yeah. Well, can I thank my honourable friend and celebrate Lisa and all those who've saved this important source of local support. The party opposite left local councils on the brink, unable to provide these vital services, letting down patients across the country. We are committed to improving dementia care through our Plan for Change, which is why we provided £69 billion boost for local government, invested £26 billion in the NHS, and made £3.7 billion available for social care, including an £880 million increase in the social care grant.
Rupert Lowe.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Does the Prime Minister agree that imprisoning Lucy Connolly, a young mother with a 12-year-old daughter, for one foolish social media post, soon deleted, is clearly not an efficient or fair use of prison?
Mr. Speaker, sentencing is a matter for our courts, and I celebrate the fact that we have independent courts in this country. I am strongly in favour of free speech. We've had free speech in this country for a very long time, and we protect it fiercely. But I'm equally against incitement to violence against other people. And I will always support the action taken by our police and courts to keep our streets and people safe.
Paul Foster.
Thanks, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I recently visited St Catherine's Hospice in Lostock Hall, which serves wonderfully my constituents of South Ribble, those of Ribble Valley and some of your constituents of Chorley, Mr. Speaker. I discovered, speaking to them, that they have to pay in excess of £350,000 a year for medication, and it can only be sourced from the private sector, not the NHS. Doing some investigating, I found there's an ICB postcode lottery out there. Some ICBs fully fund and supply our medication, some subsidise, some don't supply it at all. There's also a disparity where evidence supports that hospices in the more deprived areas aren't funded, those in the more affluent areas are funded. Would the Prime Minister please speak with the Secretary of State for Health and Social Care as a matter of urgency and get free medication supplied by all ICBs to all hospices across the country?
Well, Mr. Speaker, we have put record amounts into the NHS in the budget, and we're beginning to see the results of that. I accept the point he makes, and we will look again to make sure the money is properly used in the most efficient way.
We're a Hobhouse.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. A month ago, I was denied entry into Hong Kong on a private visit. At the absence of any explanation, this seems to hint at a hidden blacklist aimed to silence any MP who speaks up against human rights abuses from the Chinese government. Many of us from any political party. Does he agree with me that this is an attack on all of us? And will he personally seek reassurances from the Hong Kong authorities that no British parliamentarian will be denied entry in this way again?
Well, can I thank her? Her experience is deeply concerning, and I know it must have affected her. I think she was hoping to see and later saw her grandchild, but it must have impacted on her, and it is deeply concerning. We need to recognise that. Ministers have raised it, including the Foreign Secretary, on numerous occasions with their counterparts both in China and Hong Kong, preventing UK citizens, including members of Parliament, from entering Hong Kong without justification, or for simply expressing their views, is completely unacceptable, and it will only undermine Hong Kong's international reputation and the relationship that we have with them. And so we will continue to raise it.
John MacDonald.
Mr. Speaker, you will know that I've raised on several occasions in the House the case of Alaa Abd El Fattah, the British-Egyptian human rights campaigner, who for several years now, many years now, has been imprisoned in Egypt, and whose mother, Layla, went on a 100-day hunger strike. I want to thank the Prime Minister for fulfilling his promise to contact the President Sisi of Egypt to secure Alaa's release, but unfortunately months on now, and Alaa remains in prison, and Layla this week has started her hunger strike again. Could I appeal to him to speak directly again to President Sisi to secure Alaa's release?
Well, can I thank him for raising this, not just today, but on the many occasions that he has. It is incredibly important that we do everything we can in this case. I have met Layla and given her my commitment to do everything I possibly can. I have had a number of contacts myself, but I'm not going to stop doing everything within my power to secure release.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Would the Prime Minister join me in welcoming my constituent Teddy, who is 6 years old, and with his mum Laura, who've come to see us today at Prime Minister's Questions. Teddy is a self-professed eco-warrior on a mission to change the world. He started out by saving thousands of plastic chocolate and sweet tubs from landfill because they're not currently recyclable. Will the Prime Minister commit to ask his Minister for Local Government to meet with Teddy and myself to discuss how we make these tubs recyclable? And does he agree with me that no matter how small you are never too little to make a big difference?
Well, can I welcome Teddy on my behalf and on behalf, I think, of the whole House. It is really incredible that Teddy has done so much already and is in the gallery somewhere. Many of us struggle for a whole lifetime to make an impact on government policy. Teddy is already age 6, having an impact, and I'll make sure that he gets to speak to the relevant minister.
Final question, Rosie Wright.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Following on from my honourable friend, I also want to mark that this week is National Epilepsy Week, an important opportunity to raise awareness of a condition that affects so many but often remains invisible. Epilepsy comes with fear and uncertainty, the anxiety of having a seizure, the impact of losing a driving licence, and the worry about medication shortages. In the UK, 1 in 100 people live with epilepsy. That's up to 6 of us in this chamber, including myself. So today I ask the Prime Minister, will he join me and the inspiring campaigners watching from the gallery in marking National Epilepsy Week as we continue to raise awareness of seizures?
Well, can I congratulate my honourable friend for her tireless campaigning on this issue and those campaigners who are with us today. I know the impact epilepsy has on people across the country, including on over 100,000 children and young people. We are committed to improving care for people with neurological conditions and setting up UK-wide Neuro Forum to improve treatment and care for those with such conditions.
That completes Prime Minister's questions. Point of order. Just let this go. Point of order, Richard Tice.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can I put on record of the House, with your permission, the sad passing yesterday of Patrick O'Flynn, a journalist, a political journalist, well known to many honourable members of this House. He died after a short battle with cancer. He was a lobby journalist for some 20 years, spending many, many days, weeks and months in the press gallery above. He will be much missed, and can I pass on the condolences of all honourable members to his wife, Carol Ann, and his 2 children.
Yeah. Can I say I'm grateful to the honourable member for his point of order. Patrick was a long-serving and well-respected member of the lobby. I'm sure the whole House will wish to join me in sending our condolences to his family for somebody who was taken so young. Point of order, Kirsty.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I'm seeking your guidance on how I get a response from the Department for Work and Pensions. I've written to the Secretary of State in relation to one of my constituents who was told by a first-tier tribunal that DWP must pay him, backdated to January 2020. We've been chasing the department for over a month for a response. This tribunal decision was in February. Can he advise how we can get a response?
I think the honourable lady knows exactly what she's going to do next. But I would say she's certainly put on the record. I hope the bench has heard. I do find it pretty appalling that government departments aren't answering all members of all political parties on time to their correspondence. Because in the end, the backbenchers are answerable to their constituents. And if they can't get the reply from departments, they're letting down the members. So I hope they are listening and answering as we speak.